Alright, today we are going to talk about graphing inequalities. So a couple reminders before we get into the actual inequality part. We want to look at number lines. So we talked about this back in Unit 3 when we were working with the coordinate plane, rational numbers, all of that. So a couple things to remember. When you move to the left on the number line, so going left, your numbers are getting smaller. When you go to the right, your numbers are getting bigger. What we talked about before when we just had number lines and we plotted just points, we were just putting, so for example, if I said where is the number 2 on the number line, we would just put a dot at 2. Or if we were to ask where is -4, we would put a dot at -4. But with inequalities, we need to remember that there's multiple answers that can be true, right? If you want to vote, you can be 18 or older. There's a lot of numbers that work for that we have to graph it a little bit differently to show all the possible solutions. So to help us with that, we are going to bring in a guest star, Miss Ida. Alright, so let's look at actually how we're going to graph here.
Alright, so when we're working with inequalities, depending on how it's written, you're going to kind of follow a few different steps. So we're going to start with if you had an inequality where your variable was on the left side. So what you always want to do when you look at your inequality is highlight the variable. So in this case, my variable is y. If your variable is on the left side, you do not have to rewrite it, and you can just keep it this way. So y is less than 2. Just to make sure we're practicing reading our symbols correctly, you're going to write this into a sentence. So y is less than 2. Your next step is similar to what Ms. Krippinger was saying. We're looking at that number and deciding where it is on the number line. So in this case, I have 0 here, so 0, 1, 2, and this is where I would plot my point. If you notice, this is a little bit different than just plotting a regular point because I have an open dot. Because this is y is less than 2 and not less than or equal to 2, my answer cannot be 2. It can only be numbers less than that. So I'm going to have an open dot. As you can see up here, if your variable is on the left side of the inequality, we're not rewriting it, and the inequality sign is pointing in the direction you need to shade. So if you were to make this inequality sign into an arrow, like this, it's showing you which way you should shade. So I am going to shade this way to show that all of these numbers on the number line are possible solutions. 1 is less than 2, 0 is less than 2, and any number further to the left.
Great job, Miss Ida.
Thank you.
Alright, so let's look at a different scenario. This is when the variable is on the left side. Now you guessed it, we're looking at it, it's on the right side, a la derecha. Okay? So if it is on the right side, we need to rewrite. I want you to highlight this, underline this, circle this, or something. This is going to be the hardest part. This is what's going to kind of mess you up a little bit sometimes. Okay? So we have to rewrite it so that it looks like this over here where the variable is on the left side. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to switch the variable and the number. We're just kind of flip-flopping them. Right now it's -6 on the left and the x is on the right. We're going to flip-flop those. I'm going to write the x on the left and the -6 on the right. But if I flip-flopped those, I kind of have to flip around our inequality sign as well. So the next step is to flip the sign. So for example, if it was greater than, it's going to become less than. If it was less than, it would become greater than. This one was less than or equal to, so we're going to flip it around, and it should be greater than or equal to. You have to keep that equal to spot there. And if I kind of look at it, I have the big gap next to the x here, I have the big gap next to the x there. So again, we're going to practice writing this. This is x is greater than or equal to -6. So I'm going to write that out. X is greater than or equal to. I'm just going to put the equal to sign so it fits in the line there. Alright, so then we're marking where this number, -6, is on the number line. Remember that negatives work differently. Our normal reaction would be, oh, let's put 6 here, because if it was a positive, it would be there, but it works in the opposite direction. So it's 0, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6 is right here. I can start by just putting an open circle, but we have the equal to part to it, which means the -6 is included in our our answer. So I'm actually filling in the dot. Okay? So the difference was, this was just less than, there's no equal to part, it's an open dot. This one has the equal to part, it's less than or equal to, we have to, or here I guess, sorry, greater than or equal to, we have to fill in the dot. Now, just like Ms. Eider said, we look at, if we have our inequality sign, what direction it is going. So if I made this into an arrow, it looks like it is going to the right. So I'm going to shade my answers to the right. And if you think about it, we're saying x is bigger than, it's greater than or equal to negative 6. So negative 5 is bigger than that, 0 is bigger than that, any positive is bigger than that. So the biggest things to remember is, you're plotting those points. The open dot means there's no equal to part. Closed dot means there is an equal to part. And when you're shading, we've done some squiggly lines just so it's easier to see. You just need to show that it's going in that direction and putting arrows on the end. Let's do a couple more practice, I think, right?
Yeah. Alright, so if we look at example 1, we have 58 is greater than or equal to x. So remember, we want to find which side our variable is on. Since it's on the right side, we have to rewrite our equation so that it's on the left side. So I'm going to switch them. My x is going to be on the left. My 58 is going to be on the right. And I need to flip my sign since I flipped my variable in numbers. So instead of greater than or equal to, I'm going to write a less than or equal to sign. So this is telling me that x is less than or equal to 58. Okay, so I'm going to find 58 on my number line, 55, 56, 57, 58, and I'm going to plot it. Since it's less than or equal to, this is going to be a closed dot. And then I'm going to look at my symbol to tell me which direction my arrow would go in. It's going to the left, so I am going to shade to the left to show that any of these solutions that are less than or equal to 58 would be possible solutions to make this inequality true.
Good job. So again, step 1, we're going to highlight our variable. So this time, is it on the left or is it on the right? It's on the left, which means I don't need to rewrite this. So somehow marking, you don't need to rewrite it. So it's already in the order. This says y is greater than negative 36. So I'm going to write that out. Y is greater than negative 36. Now I'm going to plot that point. Again, we've got negatives here. They can be a little bit trickier. They work in the opposite way. So I'm counting kind of in the reverse direction. Negative 30, 31, negative 32, negative 33, negative 34, negative 35, negative 36. Since there's no equal to part, it remains an open circle here. And then if I look at this as a arrow, it looks like it is pointing to the right. So I'm going to shade to the right, draw my arrow on the end. One more thing I want to mention that I forgot before is one way that I remember if it needs to be closed or open is I kind of think of the open as like a hole, and the number would fall through because it's not included, versus this is like a filled-in hole and it would stay there. It's not going to fall through. It's part of the solution.
Good trick.
Thanks.
All right. X is greater than or equal to 17, so I'm going to highlight my variable. It is on the left, so I do not have to rewrite my inequality. X is greater than or equal to 17. So I'm going to find that number on the number line, 15, 16, 17. I'm going to plot it. Since I have the equal to, that's going to be a closed dot. If this was an arrow, it would be pointing to the right. So I am going to shade to the right. So any of these solutions that are equal to or greater than 17 are possible solutions.
Getting really good at this.
Oh yeah.
All right, number 4, last one before we move into the next thing that we're going to be doing with the graphing. So I'm highlighting my variable. It is on the right side, which means we do need to rewrite it. So we're going to flip them around. I'm going to move my variable to the left, my number to the right, and I need to flip my sign from less than to greater than. And let's list that out. A is greater than negative 61. So A is greater than negative 61. Plotting those points, again, it works in the opposite way. So we've got negative 60, negative 61 right here. Okay? Thank you, Miss Eider. I did that on purpose to make sure that it was checked. So I'm going to just put an open circle right there, because there's no equal to part. You got me? And then if we look at this as an arrow, it is pointing to the right. So not a ton of room here, but I'm going to show that I'm shading it to the right. All right. I think we've got it for this part. Let's move on to the next step.
All right. Now we are going to give you the graphed inequality, and you are going to need to tell us what that represents, what inequality it represents. So now we're kind of working backwards. We're going to look at which number the dot is plotted at, whether it's open or closed. So if we're looking here, if this is negative 24, this would be negative 25. So that is going to be my number part. And my arrow is facing this way. So I can draw my inequality. These are numbers that are less than. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in my variable. So x is less than negative 25. Because this is an open circle, I do not need to put an equals to sign. And this would be my inequality.
Good job. All right, so here, got my variable x, the point that it's at, 5, 6, 7, 8. It is shaded to the right, which means that it is greater than. And there is a closed circle, which means it's an equal to part. Okay, Ms. Iris, head up. I'm going to finish the rest of the notes for us here. So this last one, we've got our variable, or second to last one, variable here. I'm going to put my number in here, which again is a negative. It's negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. It is shaded to the left, so it is going to be less than. It has the closed dot, so it's equal to. And one more, starting with my variable, listing my number. It's right in the middle of 45 and 46, so I'm going to list that as 45.5. It is shaded to the right, which means it is greater than, and it's an open dot, so there's nothing there. And go ahead and try the U-tries on your own.